Alright, here's the auto darkening unit out of my welding helmet, and here's the two batteries out of it. They say it's not used or serviceable, but I serviced it. Oh, we'll never focus on that, but those are Panasonic CR2330 3-volt units, and they appear that they are not a rechargeable type, so I don't understand how in the hell they recharge in this unit. They're a lithium-ion type cell, and the way you get this unit apart, take these knobs out. These sensitivity and delay knobs pull right out, but you basically, you've got this wire hold down, you pop it up, and your sensitivity knob comes through that hole right there. This knob pulls off, and it's just a little rheostat. There's a nut on it. You unscrew the nut and pop this little bezel off. First you take that off, then unscrew that nut and take the bezel off and take this unit out. Now it's sort of glued together, but what I did was I wedged a knife in the gap there all the way around it and popped it loose and pulled those control knobs out of these pots very gently and took it off. Now these batteries sort of sat like that, something like that, and they had these little metal tabs resistance welded to the back of them, and they were soldered in that port there. Let's see if I can get something to point with, maybe a pen, something of contrasting color. The positive was soldered here, and the negative was soldered there. Then this one is a positive, and then the negative is on the other side of it. Right there, and there's a little hole in the circuit board. It's covered with solder right now, but basically I just warmed it up with the soldering iron and pulled those pins out of the board. Actually, that would be the end that would go in the board. This is the end that was resistance welded to the cell. So I popped those out. Before I popped them out, I put a voltmeter on them, and the one cell has no voltage in it, and the other one's only got like 2.2 volts in it. So these things are 4 years old. I think they're completely done. I'm going to get some more ordered, and I will make a part 2 to this video, and we'll show putting them back in and a test. But basically I tested them with the voltmeter first to make sure that that was in fact the problem, and I believe it to be at this point. So you just got to be real careful popping this cover off, because it's really not made to be taken apart, but if you're careful you can get it apart and wedge it off. So there you go. That's that part for now. I'm going to see if I can get some cells online, and I'll bring you back and see what I find. Guys, we're getting ready to do the repair on this welding helmet here, and basically we're going to install batteries and battery holders. These are the batteries that were in it. Whoa, focus and mocus. CR2330 3-volt batteries, and I couldn't find any of those at the Radio Shack to replace it, but I was able to obtain these button cell battery holders. Good Lord, there we go. Those guys right there, and these you can solder. They have pins on them. They can go to the circuit board, but I've tested, and once they're down in there, I can't get the cover back on, so we're going to mount them externally, kind of like that. I've got some wire. This is cannibalized out of an old computer case. This is a LED power on indicator set of wires that came out. They're real small gauge. I don't know if we can see that. We'll try and get that in the camera there. And I've got a soldering iron. This kind right here. This is a Radio Shack one. I've had it for years. It's butane powered. So we're going to get that soldering iron heating up in here. This thing's pretty old. The spark igniter doesn't light it, and it's pretty wore out, but it still works. So we're going to set that down off to the side. We've got some small rosin core solder. Take the back of this up a little bit. There we go. So we've got that. I've got a flux dispenser here. This is just a like a paint pen style, and we can flux our connections with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a set of these wires to each one of the spots on the circuit board where the batteries came out with those little solder tabs on them. I was able to actually find the ones I needed online, but I didn't want to wait, and I kind of wanted to modify this anyway so that I don't have to tear this cover off every time that I'm going to do a battery change on it. So basically with soldering, for those of you who may be soldering for the first time or have never soldered very much, keeping your tip clean is sort of important for heat transfer, so you can heat something quickly. I've got a little sponge here that's wet. Usually that will do the trick. And I'll show you how we do this here in a second. I'm going to unwind a little bit of solder. Yeah, she's not quite hot enough yet. Oh, there she's starting a little bit. Other thing you can do is they make little holders that hold what looks like a scouring pad in them, and then have a sponge unit you can put on it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tin these wires. So we'll put a little dabble of flux on each one of those wires. And we'll get a little solder ready to go here. Actually, we're not going to do it that way. I'm going to actually solder it to the board first. I've got a piece of tape on the side of this that had the positive, so each one of the holes in that board that's facing toward that way, that's closest to that, is a positive. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to be careful and warm up the solder that's in the board. And there is a hole in there, and this should go down through it fairly easily. I may have to switch to a different soldering iron. This one can be a little finicky. Just not wanting to transfer the heat here today. I don't want to cook any of these transistors that are next to it. There it went. Yeah, we may not put them down through the hole. We may have to just lay them across. I'm having trouble getting that wire to start down through the hole in the board. Plus, it doesn't help that I shake quite a bit, so holding things steady is not my strong suit. And maybe it'd help if I tin that wire first. Maybe we'll try that. I'll do that kind of off camera here. There we go. Now we'll try it. See if we can transfer that heat a little bit faster. There we go. It's a beautiful thing. So there's a I think you can probably see that. I got the camera plugged in, but I've got that positive lead soldered down here. I'll give you a close-up in a few minutes here. I'm going to make it a little bit further down the old line. And these wires were twisted together before. I suppose I should have untwisted them first. But we'll go ahead and do that right now. Now when you're soldering on a circuit board like this, you got to kind of be careful of your surroundings and not overheat anything if you can avoid it, because you might melt solder somewhere else that you're not aware that you're doing until you put it back together and things don't work. Okay, so there's one wire. And now we'll go ahead and tin up a negative lead. We'll put that one over on the negative here. Now I've got plenty of wire here, so I'm going to basically cut my wire in half so I can do the other two. I'm only going to strip a couple millimeters of wire back on this. Forgot to flux that wire. Sometimes when wire's older, it gets oxidation inside it and it doesn't tin up the way it's supposed to. Okay, there's another positive lead soldered. And we'll do one more negative. It's a little bit longer than I want it to be. Okay, make sure we're not contacting any other strips on the board. Now, I don't want a ton of extra wire hanging out of this, because I'm going to hot glue those battery holders to the inside of the helmet. So we'll go ahead and knock that on the floor. That'll work. Strip back these wires and get them hooked up to the battery holders. Now with these battery holders, the outside tab here is the positive, and the pin for it is right below it. So we'll make sure we hook the positive to its proper terminal. And that's where I'm going to stop for a moment here. I'm going to get something to hold that battery holder still while I solder to it, so I'll be back in a minute. Just got a pair of vice grips there because I don't have one of those little third hand helper things. Okay, there's a good solder joint. And we'll flip it the other way and we'll tin that post right after I put some flux on it. Go ahead and get that one soldered up. Okay, there's one battery holder hooked up. I could have put some sort of connectors on this, I suppose, and then just soldered it to the board, but that's not the way I was choosing to do it. And here's the other battery holder. Those wires tinned. And basically, I keep saying I'm tinning these wires. Basically, that's a process of getting solder to draw into or onto a surface. Having a little trouble with this soldering iron. It's not being overly cooperative. It's time to replace it, but okay, make sure I have the proper terminal facing up. Get some solder on that terminal. Tin it up. You can see it doesn't take a tremendous amount of time. It probably took me longer to tear the face cover off of this thing. Oh, I wish I could hold this straight. Okay, we've got our soldering connections made. Turn the soldering iron off. Put some batteries in it and we'll see what we get. Appears that it's working, so I'll show you the next step when I go ahead and I'm basically just going to make, there's a notch to let the other wires out of the side of this. I'm going to have to back the zoom out on this. You can see that little notch right there. I think I might have to make that a little bigger. I will make that bigger and I'll twist these wires up and bring them out and get this cover back on. And then I'll show you attaching it to the helmet. Alright guys, here's what we got. This is the helmet upside down. I've got those terminals, or battery holders, hot glued in there. Got a little dot of hot glue over where I notched that out for the wires to come out. And these helmets, if you flash them real quick up to a fluorescent light, they'll dim. And it works. So we'll get the headband put back in it here. Now one side of the headband has a little notched piece that sits in the inside, and we'll see if we got this back together right. I believe I did. If I got it back together wrong, we'll know right away because it won't flip. Okay, so that's all back together, and we'll go do a test fire with this thing and see what happens. So there you go, all back together. It's about as good as I'm going to get for this job. So I hope you enjoyed that little part, and we'll try it out. Better look inside the helmet. Those battery holders are hot glued down in there. I put a little dab of hot glue over the battery because they felt loose in there, and I didn't want to, you know, set this down too sharply and then have a battery pop out on the floor or something like that. Hot glue is real easy to remove. Not a whole lot to it. Usually the bond is minimal. You can break that loose and then peel it off. Those battery holders were cheap, so if I really screwed them up, they're only about $2 a piece, and the batteries weren't that expensive either. I think I had $12 wrapped up in 2 batteries and 2 battery holders, and the wire was free because I robbed it out of an old computer case. So I'm going to put you guys in the helmet, and I have the sensitivity maxed out on the least sensitivity, so it's very sensitive, and the delay time's at basically nothing. And I'm going to flash it up at the fluorescent light, and it's working good, and I'll turn it on. Yeah, it's on shade 13, so. Okay, you can see through the helmet. Now watch the light. Now we can hold it up against the light and keep it dark. Take 2. So when we put this thing in the helmet and up against the light, it goes out. Now I'm going to turn it to the grind mode, and you can see it doesn't flash, and I'll turn the grind mode off, and it goes dark. So there you go, guys. That's how to repair your welding helmet if it has batteries in it at all, from splitting that case in 2 and pulling the little knobs off, and taking it out by releasing this hold down and putting some external battery holders in it so you don't have to pop it out when you want to change batteries. This is a $180 helmet. Some of the other ones you can actually replace the batteries because they have little battery holders that slide down out of the bottom. If I ever break this helmet, I'll buy one of those style, and we'll go from there. This has been a good helmet so far, so hope you enjoyed that how to fix your helmet video and solder in some battery holders and make it like new. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.